Hi. So I'm working out how to start the live stream. It's just a case of I normally give context where I am, but in that sense nothing's changed. It's still the same rhetoric, and at the moment I'm managing to get on, finish making some bread. My mental health, physical health stopped me making halfway yesterday, and it was just left out all night. So just finishing making the bread here, purple cabbage and rye bread. I've never tried it before. And I've not long been awake. I've not long been out of bed. Mental health, responsible again, physical health. And I've put the news on like I've been doing most mornings with, well, even before the recent conflict. I was putting the news on in the mornings when I get up. And they were just highlighting the refugee situation at the moment in Ukraine. And it activated me. I was responding. You can't help but didn't respond to such a, how would you call it? Such a in your face real situation that humanity has been going through for too long. For thousands of years we've been going to war, haven't we? It seems to be a more human culture to go to war than anything else. And I'm trying to, with this conflict, I'm aware that I make live streams. I put out information to the world, and we had the pandemic, and I gave my opinions here and there on what I viewed the situation to be. And for some reason, when it's come to war, I have to be a little bit more sensitive. And it makes sense. I can't, it's not that I'm flippant in any way. I still turn on the live streams and I speak what's on my mind, because there shouldn't be anything to hide. But I'm finding myself in a lot more denser energy than the times when I was giving my opinion on the pandemic. And the reason is because when it comes to the world, I have my viewpoints. I have my understanding, like we all do. We have a viewpoint of the world, constructed by the energy we've given to life up until that point, and all the input the external world has had into us. And I've got a theory, like we all do, about the world, how it's structured, what's good, what's bad, and what's the truth. And unfortunately, the more I'm listening to this war, what I'm hearing is basically Russia are doing an atrocious thing. Correct. What Russia are doing is totally inappropriate. It's totally inhumane, totally not what I would have wanted our human culture to reflect. And what we have, because of the terms of good guys and bad guys, anybody that's on the side of Ukraine they're going to listen to the media and the rhetoric being put out by the people on their side. And you're not going to listen to the counter and find the balanced view, find the truth, find out the misinformation between what you hear and what the other side hears. And there's I suppose what it is, there's an ignorance within us to think that whatever we're doing, whatever side that's good, is good. Because ultimately I believe we view ourselves as good people. And in that place, when you see something so obviously wrong as this invasion is, it's easy to make that snap decision within us. All right, this is right, that's wrong. In other words, I don't need to think anymore. I know I'm on the side of the good guys. I know that what Russia is doing is wrong. So what the good guys must be putting out there as reasons, as information, as this, that and the other, must all be correct. But that's where I've started to get a bit annoyed with this war, because, and I said it on a recent live stream, my general perception of the world is that really America, the UK, they tend to go hand in hand. And the NATO and all the other different coalitions that have been formed over the years to fight different wars are the aggressors most of the time, or have been in the past. And it's just a shock to realise that most of the people don't realise that. Because if they did, this sympathetic output and cry for Ukraine, and there should be. The country's being ripped apart. People are dying. For what? For greed, for power, for control, for land, for money. Things that aren't really real beyond our own mental value system. But how can you ever really value power, greed, control, land, money above human life? So we find ourselves in this place and we don't realise the actual political system. This is why I don't do politics, because it's all corrupt, man. It's all like you're listening to politics through spin doctors constantly. Like, you're only hearing what they want you to hear. But I'm fully aware that only up until last year, when America left Afghanistan, and the way they left it was absolutely terrible. They went in to remove the Taliban. The Taliban are still there. What was the point? I mean, it's not like the Taliban are Russia or anything. The Taliban are like a 3-year-old gang with sticks and stones. And the biggest army in the world couldn't do what they set out to do. But they left. That was a good thing. Regardless, give the land back to the people, give the control back to whoever. So I'm left thinking, well, have America learnt their ways? Have America learnt lessons from the aggression of their past? And this is what's been in the back of my mind, because it's like, almost like Putin is doing the same thing as America have been doing for too long. And it's still wrong. What Putin's doing is still wrong. But this should really give people a chance to step back and see the world clearer, because if you're able to follow politics on any level and you have an emotional response, you should really be aware on a mental level of what's going on. So what is going on with you all, in the sense of, when you viewed the wars in Afghanistan, the conflicts, the beef in Iran, Iraq as well, what were your perceptions? Did you see, oh no, the Taliban, Mr. This is Bin Laden, yeah, no, real bad guys, real threatening people to the life of humanity? Yeah, absolutely. The Americans did the right thing. The Brits did the right thing. The good guys did the right thing by their actions. What were your thoughts then? And what are your thoughts now? Because what Putin is doing is basically America rewind 5 years plus. We give them the 5 years grace of that time in Afghanistan, because it was the initial action. That was the culprit, that was responsible for the trauma. Everything else is seeing what's been instigated out and playing it out. So what are your thoughts, you know? How does it differ? Does it differ? And then you realise, well, hang on a second, we're talking about sides here. We're talking about the sympathy for the Ukrainian people, and that should be pre-mandatory. But if we can just separate that out, because they're innocent people suffering, step back and look at the picture. You're on the side of good guys right now, most of the world, unless you're Russian or Belarusian, which, that's a killer, man. Belarus is totally fucked. It's just like, right, we're either gonna surrender and piss off the entire world, because Russia is gonna do this bad thing anyway, and they want this bit of land from us to put some military to help that situation. But if we don't, they'll probably invade us as well. So sanctions are being issued against Belarus. The people are going to suffer there, whatever, whether the good guys win or the bad guys win. Because if they'd have stuck up for the good guys, chances are they'd experience the same fate. Politics can't see that. Politics can't see Belarus is in the middle of a, what's it called? Rock and a hard place. And ultimately, it was Belarus's fate to suffer. What were they really meant to do? What I'm getting at is, we're looking at this situation, and we're not truly aware, I don't believe, as a collective of people, the impacts of the past. And you know, it could have been the case of, oh, America have been doing this 40 years. This is what Putin's thinking. America have been doing this 40, 50, 60, 70 years. Going into corrupt countries, liberating the people. And the narrative just seems to be accepted by the populations. All right, well, that's obviously a good acceptable rhetoric for war and invasion. Let's just do the same thing. No, let's not annoy the people. And in that place, you begin to see that, well, hang on a second, there are double standards. And those are the problems that are creating this war. Because unless we're dealing with truth, good faith in communication, in honesty, so talking about the media as well, we're trusting them to put out a fair, balanced, honest perspective on affairs that are happening around the world, the news, and not, oh yeah, I own this media company, I'm a multi-billionaire, I have interests obviously to manage those billions and billions and billions and billions and billions. Hopefully I'll be a trillionaire soon, of pounds, dollars, rubles. And hopefully my wealth will grow, because I'll back it this way. It will support my interests much better. And we don't get an honest viewpoint on news anymore. Also, I don't quite know how much it's true, but I can well imagine the people that govern the security of a country what's it called when you embargo? That's it. You embargo certain news topics, certain information, so that the people aren't worried, the people aren't disturbed in any way. There's not unrest, and that's understandable. But when you look at the situation of that's created, there's a very controllable rhetoric that's put out to the people that supports the same idea and ultimately isn't news, because it's unbalanced. It's imbalanced. And that really does go to point towards the likelihood of ulterior motives by the controlling elite. So whoever's got the power in the world, well, if the media is such that for the sake of not disturbing the people, the news is no longer the news and the news is something else, but the information being put out on the news just supports a very one-sided idea of reality, the least that can happen is the news stops calling itself the news and starts calling itself, oh, affairs of the world according to Sky News. Affairs of the world according to the BBC. Affairs of the world according to Russia. RT, Russia Today. And that is where we're at. We're listening to propaganda. And it's a killer because the thing that really annoyed me was with all the refugees going into neighbouring countries, the borderline racist approach to that by at least Hungary. And the reason is because I got really affected a couple of years back when we had the migrant crisis from Syria. Ironically, it was just before the pandemic hit. And then the pandemic hit and it was like no more information on the refugees from Syria anymore. It's all about pandemic. I was like, well, what's happening to the refugees, from Syria? They're in those camps. God, there's a pandemic and they're in those camps? Is it going to be like a World War II gas chamber sort of situation? You're putting the people there to die? And I was really affected by it. And then all of a sudden, we get a war closer to home, a war closer to people who represent the same values as us, i.e. the same religion. Their skin tone is closer to our skin tone. Hungary and Ukraine, they're both white, whereas Syrians, they're slightly more tanned, more Muslim, more Islamic, darker skin. And the reporter was saying, Hungary put up barbed wire, razor wire, to stop the refugees coming from Syria. Now they're opening their doors and welcoming in the refugees from just next door. And I can sort of understand it, this is going to happen anyway. You're going to get the refugees. But it's like, we have to understand the greed in humanity. Because it's like, I'm sure at some level, it's like Hungary's like, nah, man. Not another fucking war, not another fucking migrant crisis. We can't deal with it as a nation. And we'd rather not have these refugees. But there's so much sympathetic outpouring because this war's in Europe now, on our doorsteps. And we've got Mr. Putin doing whatever he wants. We don't want to make ourselves weaker to that. We've got to back the good guys here in this situation. And we've got to open up the borders and we've got to let refugees in. We can't piss off the good guys in case Putin wants to come for us next. We can't and we want some of that sympathy. We can't turn away that sympathy and be a bad guy to that. Not when it's happening like this. Poland and Lithuania and all the other countries are letting in Ukrainian refugees, but Hungary can't be seen to turn them away. Hopefully the people are so dumbed down to the affairs of the world according to media corporations that they'll forget about the migrant crisis. and what we did there, and they'll see us as good guys again. They'll see us as, oh yeah, we're helping out with the problem. And it's really disturbed me because I was really affected by the migrant crisis a couple of years ago, and how the media just took the piss with how they dealt with it, given the pandemic. All of a sudden coming to a more important role within what the people care about. But what I really meant by the title was that I've been reflecting on war. I've been reflecting on the suffering of the world over the past year. And within that, the place that really gets me is war. Because in a war, you get so many injustices happening because the haphazard approach to war, taking a nation, means, well, yeah, there's going to be 1 or 2 casualties, at least. And within those casualties, you can't pick and choose, oh, is it going to be a man, a woman, a child? Who's going to suffer? I'm sure the goodness of the people dropping the bombs from the Russian side have a conscience as well. And if they could, because it is instilled in us as human beings that for some reason men go first, women and children and the elderly are protected. And I'm sure within the insane consciousness that is war, those people dropping bombs from Russia at the moment and from all the other countries that have dropped bombs before, I wouldn't be surprised. I want to see the list, actually, find out how many countries in this world haven't dropped a fucking bomb ever. And those countries will be the ones that have just been formed, because I'm pretty sure every country has dropped a bomb at some point or another, even if not in active warfare, just for testing and just for knowing they work, sort of thing. Regular, oh, has this bomb gone off, we better test the batch, sort of thing. I don't know how bombs expiry dates work, but what really got me is war, on the reflection of suffering. And within that, there was a story, a very real story, that I stumbled upon. And ironically, it's reflective of someone I met the year before. She was from Rwanda. Now, Rwanda's a sticky subject for me because Hotel Rwanda, the movie with, what's his name? He was in Ocean's 11. Don Wahito, he's a black actor. I warm to him for some reason. He hasn't got a bad thing about him, sort of energy. And ultimately, Hotel Rwanda really affected me because I saw the sickness of humanity. And within that film, you also see the polarizing greatness of humanity in terms of we'll just call him Don for the time being. I don't know his full name. Don's character. He fought and he fought to save life within a situation of utter madness. And that movie really affected me. It's stayed with me ever since I've watched it, and it's one of my favourite movies as a result. But it really got me to see the sickness that happens within the mentality of whoever it is that says, war. Let's go to war. Because it was a real sickening thing that happened. They socially cleansed, not socially, they racially cleansed the population. They divided the population into light skin and dark skin. And obviously there's a white man somewhere or another saying, let's go to war. And within that, within his sickness, within her sickness, we don't know, but it's likely a man. They made the decision to say, right, we're obviously white, we're supreme, let's divide this country into fighting themselves, and then we don't ever need to go to war in that country again. They'll be forever divided, and we can do whatever the F we want, and nobody's going to say a thing. What's the point of dividing a population into two different skin colours? Ask yourselves that. What's going on with the people in the world that want war, that are willing to do such a horrific, atrocious thing? And the sickness is, if you look at it, what's happened is now Rwanda's become this, so much money has poured into Rwanda since to heal the pain of that war. And within the healing of that, unfortunately they've just totally destroyed Rwanda's past and everything that Rwanda may have ever stood for, because the money's poured in and the country is like a modern, to my understanding, I haven't done the research, but little bits I've heard, it's like it's almost like the West, you know. It's not like it's not like other countries in Africa anymore. Everything's on point, they've got good infrastructure, they've got economy coming back. There's, for me, when I've seen that, there's something that says soullessness within it. Now, we've had this atrocity that's happened to us that should be an example to all of humanity to never happen again. But instead of you all accepting the truth of the matter, truth of the situation, acknowledging it and making world changes so that no other human being should suffer what's happened in Rwanda ever again, we take the easy way out because we want our Starbucks coffee, our Nike kicks, our latest fashion items, our new car, our new mobile phone. And unfortunately, the people's greed takes pride. And within that, what happens is, how are we going to heal this, right? We can either heal truth for all of humanity, or we can just pour a load of money that doesn't really exist, we just create it on a computer, into the country, let the country get to a certain place of stability within the world that we want to say is the world, the ideologies of the American dream and the affluence the West has, we can just pour money into it, let it get to a standard, let the people have Nike kicks, Starbucks coffee as well when the rest of Africa can't. And how are they ever going to complain when they're above the rest of Africa? You know, you've had this atrocious war. Stop complaining, man. And it affected me, really affected me, that I saw humanity, our sickness. And you can't deny it. And I've never really met anybody from Rwanda, but on an admission to hospital the year before, one of the staff was from Rwanda, and she told me her story. And basically she lost her family. Basically she had to fight for life as a, I can't remember how old she was. She must have been a teenage girl. And when I was reflecting on the suffering of the world, I didn't even think about that. Ironically, the story where I stumbled upon myself in the exploration there, that really got to me, was basically her story. What if you're a 12-year-old girl, or younger, because that's possible too, or older, doesn't really matter, and your country enters a state of war, bombing, shelling starts happening, and they don't mean to kill women and children, they don't mean to rip apart the innocent people's lives, they just want to affect the military complexes and do all of that, because this is a European war. It's all about showing face, showing some good intention, because Europeans, we're all stuck in our heads, we're all a bit fucked that way. So we have to show a good side next time we drop that bomb. We have to provide a reason for our willingness to kill and rip apart lives. And the situation is, what happens if you're a 12-year-old girl, younger or older, your country goes to war, and a bomb is dropped, and unfortunately, just unfortunately, because they didn't mean to, your entire family, friends are all killed because it hits your street when you're not home. And everyone dies. And you come home, trouble. What are you going to do? Your country is in a state of war. The pain to know that your family are dead, your friends are dead, your home has been ripped apart. And you've got to start thinking about survival as a 12-year-old girl, possibly 6-year-old girl. You've got to finding food, finding shelter, clothing, warmth, and you're dealing with your family dying, and you've got to be wary of what the next bomb is being dropped. Is unimaginable. It's some next level shit. I don't know how you can ever come back us in the same way. When we're all about our next cafe latte from Starbucks, our next kicks from Nike, our next iPhone 37. Look what this one can do. This one can fold. This one can do star jumps. Hell. But ultimately somewhere in Ukraine, something very close to that situation, certainly. So it's going to happen more than once. That as close enough as you ever want is going to happen. So much sympathy going out. Ever pathetic of the reality. But I believe where my autism makes me slightly different, I'm aware, is that stuff needs solutions. For solutions to problems. I'm in a situation and realise we are powerless. We are powerless in the first instance to really do anything. But that powerlessness isn't a justifiable reason for the thing. Because if you're a human being, to make a little bit of a dent, you boulder to chisel away road, and you know the best you can do is to take a chunk out of it like that. Forget final results. Think about your life. When you die, do you not want to know as a human being for the sake of all of humanity? Because to me, what it says is taking a chunk out of that boulder, and you need that boulder removed for the sake of the lives of everybody, taking a chunk out of it that much. What is heaven? Karma. Knowing that you shouldn't have to suffer as a result of your actions. Your actions are important, your words are important throughout your whole. And to me, taking a chunk out of that boulder, that's and just maybe, if you take a chunk out like that, and you haven't got the ability, like we said, persuade the rest of the world to take it. But if you instill that spirit within yourself to do so, what you're doing is create a situation. Give yourself hope that maybe, just maybe, the other human beings will get the same mission to take a chunk out of that boulder that much. I saw a speech by Trump and Bush from before were so comical in different ways. And you look at Bush, he's almost as orange as Trump. Energy and emotion of a population. There should be care there. And he looks careless. He's like, I'm president, that's all I wanted. I'm 70, I can barely walk, I can barely see. I look a bit like Bush, there and thereabouts, but I'm not really here. Because I saw him giving a speech, and all I was hearing, guys. But what they're doing, or at least not in the first instance, is using this war, using this injustice, say he's on Russia is always opposite to America. Ever since Rocky made that movie, you can't America again. So the same actions that America's been playing for years, so it's nothing new. But what I hear when I listen today is almost like they're using the situation for the same purpose as all the injustices that they're preparing this situation future events. I know that's hard to understand, but it's like, if you look at the world, as I said, like, America aren't good guys. If you just look at it like that, Russia aren't good guys. Being is the good guy. That a chance as capitalism got, and if you look at the world like that, you may have been reluctant to draw any conclusions on the actions of the whatever good. You may be not drawn up and cons to the media. But if you make it a bit more balanced, remembering humanity as the good guy and basically any external system as the bad guy, forget the nation, just look at pure actions. You get a bit and that understanding allows you to hear something deep. And it was all like, you know, they from the side that is good. Let's give them what they want, and within that we'll hide our intentions. In other words, contradicted America's actions in the past, and within that contradiction there was a lie. Within that contradiction there was no acknowledgement. Within that contradiction, the person that was trying to be the good guy is still as bad as ever. And all I heard was, we are using this action by somebody we can label as a bad to make our own desire for the world more. It is that the people in the controlling elite stupidity, the emotional stupidity of the population, the reality of the people, that to how they live, due to the world, due to how we grow. We're emotionally affected by, and to know that for the sake a controlling elites is the sickness of the reality. I wanted to make how can I put it? A perception. And so in other words, take that speech, make a video of it, stating what Biden is really meaning. Because I can't believe speech, knowing the impact that they're going to have, knowing America's past actions in this world, awareness, the consciousness, the people that are going to be listening with respect and doing the same thing again. So for a perspective on what he was really meaning with each sentence, with each statement, because it was like one statement after another. I was hearing it, I was like, where is this coming from? This is just impossible to hear. So let's remember what's happening to Ukraine. Total injustice. It must be stopped. But the people that are the means to stop it don't have a good track record. And their actions at the moment, it's not displaying as a result, given what's taking place. In other words, there's a war happening now in Ukraine. And these wars are time after time. Why? That is for humanity, for the human spirit. Why don't we do that? You know, for Biden to have stood there and said, yes, America, a great karma. We know our mistakes of the past to allow our mistakes to become, how would you put it, acceptable as a result of our bad that was present. I said, if you're aware of politics, change way I am, forget politics, you hear, use your own humanness to hear the truth. You want the human being